Hey, what's going on, guys? Ryan back with another Saturdays are for the Sims week 4 this time. We're going to optimize some lineups, simulate them, take a look at how I'm building for the week 4 slate for a couple of these select contests. This week, as usual, I'm going to build in this tutorial just for a couple of the saddies and the queues that I'm in. So we'll kick it off and we'll go from there. So one thing that I do want to point out here in the solver, I've got some custom settings here. So like what's really cool is you can do slate specific cache builds, or sorry, not slate specific cache builds, but builds specifically for like 150 max, 20 max lock Tua custom. So like you'll notice if I go to this lock Tua, I can go to quarterback, and as an example for this rule is I would find Tua and lock him, and you'll notice when I go back to custom, I've got my entire quarterback pool, all the boost, all of those things, the rules that I've set, the lineups, how I'm projecting 50%, the base projections and 50% ceiling there. If I go back to the 20 max to a lock, you'll notice all of that stuff changes back to 1. None of my boosts are being applied here to running backs, quarterback. You can see I just got 2. So quick, cool little feature there. Let's jump back in. All right, so I'm building lineups for some queues. This is what I have loaded right now from the entries manager. So you can see I've got some saddies and some queues for King of the Beach, FFWC, so on and so forth. In the optimizer, I've made a lot of different changes so far. I'm boosting games that I want a ton of exposure to. So I've got Miami, Buffalo boosted. I've got the Cincinnati side of the ball boosted a little bit more than the Tennessee side. You can see I've got the Vegas Chargers boosted. I've got San Francisco boosted a ton here with Arizona. You'll see how that correlates all the way down through quarterback pool, running back pool, everyone. I've docked Joe Mixon here, so I went and did a manual dock, even though I've got Tennessee at 3. I've got Joe Mixon docked 3 here, but if we go take a look at the wide receivers like Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, you'll notice that their their boost is set to 4 for Chase, 3 for T. So like I went in and I said, yeah, I want, for instance, like I want more Gabe Davis. So I'm going to boost him to 5, even though this game boost is only set to 4. And that's just like boosting specific players in an environment that I like maybe a little bit more than some of their ancillary pieces like Stephon Diggs or Knox or Kincaid in that specific Buffalo game. So just a cool way to get exposure to players that you want without like forcing or locking. And kind of letting still the math and the projections and the sims build good lineups, even though you can still put in your brain play here. So I've optimized a ton of lineups already, and you can see it is jamming. It was jamming Jimmy G down my throat like 70%. And so I set a max to 20 just to try and disperse throughout this set of lineups. Because remember, I'm optimizing and building these lineups so I can sift through them and save them and then simulate them and kind of rinse and repeat that process, right? So we're simming, we're sifting, and we're saving, and we're repeating. You need to trademark that. Sift, sim, no wait. Sim, sift, save? Yeah. Sim, sift, save. So anyways, it was giving me a ton of Jimmy, so I set a max, like I said, just so I could get more distribution of quarterbacks so I could start combing through some of these lineups. So I've done that, and like what I'll do is like I know that I want some of the Miami side of the ball. I think if you look at the projective ownership relative to the game environment and the ceiling of some of these players, like I guess a recent bias thinking is like everyone was on the Minnesota side of the ball last week, and the Chargers kind of came under own, or specifically like Herbert came in under own, but those Herbert double stacks were great. And I think you get the same thing with Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle this week as well, just to keep that product ownership down just a little bit, but still having good lineups for some of these 500-man fields, 100-man fields, whatever it is, where you're not overly concerned about the ownership to a certain extent. So then what I'll do is I'll actually sift through and I'll click on Tua, and now I start combing. So, okay, cool. Dawson Knox, I think that's like a half decent pivot away off of Kincaid. Tyreek Hill, Kincaid, 11%. So it looks like Knox's projected ownership has actually caught a little bit of steam since Thursday, Friday. Maybe that makes Kincaid a slightly better play if we're going to actually just be splitting the difference there. Tua, Kyron, Javonte. And so, I'll kind of sift through these. And the other thing that I like to do is go back over here in the right-hand side. And now that I've got Tua filtered, I'll take a look at the wide receivers and okay, so who's another wide receiver that I really want? Well, I really want Gabe Davis in my Tua lineups. So, let's filter by Gabe Davis. Who's another wide receiver that I really, really like this week? Okay, well, I really want a lot of Jamar. So it looks like, okay, there's one Tua, Davis, Jamar lineup. Who's the bring back? It's Durham Smythe. Okay, because it has CMC. So, I might look at this lineup and be like, I think this is a good shell, but I'm going to put in some brain play, some I know better here, and I'm going to edit this lineup. So I just hit this little edit. Let's grab another tight end here. We'll just do the chalk Zach Ertz for the sake of this. CMC, that's too much for me, so I'm going to remove CMC. I'm going to put in Pollard. I'm going to come up from Samaje. And I can kind of see how much salary I have left here. And okay, I think Kyron's in a good spot. So I've got $200 left over. I could even continue to tweak this a little bit more, but I didn't make a whole lot of changes to, I don't have a Miami bring back. So I got to figure that out. How do I get a Miami bring back? That's always an option. I'm actually going to just trash this lineup so I don't get it in my sims here. And we're going to go back and filter by quarterback and start combing through some Anthony Richardson lineups. Okay. And so I'll kind of repeat that process for game stacks, game environments that I want, kind of letting the projections steer and guide the way to these shell lineups. And then I might edit those lineups as you can see. And so what I'll then do is simulate all of these lineups. So the lineups that I've saved. So I'll sim them and we'll see how they come out. I'll just sim all of them here. Why not, as an example for the video. All right, awesome. So now that I've got my sim results here, this is now where we once again sift. We're going to comb through all of these and we're going to find lineups with decent ROIs from quarterbacks and players that we like. So in the last example, I had done some Anthony Richardson lineups, and I'll go through and I'll say, okay, AR to Josh Downs seems a little bit thin. I probably want AR to Pittman. I think if I'm really looking for ceiling in stuff that's 1,000-man, in 100-man, Downs is probably fine. 4 for 61 in a TD is more than reasonable in 100-man. I'm just making shit up too, by the way. So I can filter here by Pittman. And there we go. I can see the two lineups with Pittman. They both seem to have okay sim ROI. And I'm going to actually get to answer a question on the sim ROI and cash rate here in just a second. So let's take a look. Kyron, Josh Jacobs, Jay Kelly, Diggs, Pittman, Downs. So there's an onslaught here. I actually think this is a much better lineup, even though the sims tell me a little bit differently, but it's because this Richardson, I don't want the double stack with Richardson where he could legitimately run in 1 or 2 and take away from some of those receivers. So Kyron, Josh Jacobs, Ayuk, Hudson's a total punt. I think that's fine. Do we have anyone from Tennessee for correlation there? No. Anyways, let's take it. We would then, give a tag, call this whatever you want. I think organization is super important. And then save it, and you'll notice it'll go from 7 to 8 here in my lineups. And then I would continue to do that through some players that I want exposure to in some of these fields. So right now I've got Anthony Richardson. Let's say you want Brock Purdy. You would go through and you would start doing the same thing with Brock Purdy, okay? So I've already done that to save time in this video because we're already longer than I want it to be. And if we go to my lineups here, you can see that I have a bunch of lineups saved and tagged for contests that I think they're a good fit for, right? So I've got this Garoppolo double with CMC and Javonte. Ownership seems okay. Dawson Knox, 7.6%. Commanders D, a little high on some of these players, but I think that's totally fine in a 100-man contest. Here's a Tua double with Tyreek and Gabe Davis, with a punt with Kylan Granson and Tyler Boyd, who's a player that I really like. I actually think I edited this one, and this was a little bit of a brain, I know better type play. You can see like the sim ROI and the cash rate, or the sim ROI is no bueno. The cash rate's a little low there, but that's okay. When I was hand building and making some of these, this was a lineup that had a better sim ROI relative to the other lineups that I was making. And that's really all I'm looking to do here. All right, awesome. So I've got this Daddy AR stack. It's got Adams, Palmer with Jamar. So you can see you've got some mini correlation here with Adams and Josh Palmer. We've got a big Jamar Chase game incoming, I think, with this pass funnel. And I've still got my Richardson, Pittman, and Kyren Williams correlation going there with the game stack. Adams, wow. Man, that lineup's don't dupe me. Don't dupe me, bro. Okay, and then you'll see what I will then do is go into my entry manager, and I've already done a little bit of this to save time, but this was like a shell lineup that I built, and I still have 7 entries, so let's just take a look. Okay, so some King of the Beach cues and some satellites like I told you I was building. We're going to manage my entries here. Oh wait, hold on, I actually forgot to see what it was. It'll show you the 106. Okay, so we're going to replace these 3 $20 King of the Beach 106 under entry managers. So let's grab 3 lineups. This is just an example. I have no idea if this is what I'll end up doing. And we're going to go to 106 and we're going to select it and we're going to hit replace. And it's as straightforward and as simple as that. Now, let's say all of this is good. I would download this entry file and upload it to DraftKings. Walk in the park on managing all of your entries here. So that is a quick peek into week 4, optimizing, running the sims, kind of combing through everything, just some general thoughts on where I think the slate is, but don't listen to me. There's way sharper people out there than me on the feel here. So I want to answer a couple questions now from a few of you. So at Brumman says, how does the boost function differ from using if-then rules? Good question. Let's hop back to the optimizer. So boosting players right here, and this actually answers Jewish McCaffrey's question. So at Jewish McCaffrey says, does each boost equate to a specific percentage increase? So yeah, they do. It's an 8% increase or decrease, whether you're boosting or docking, and except NBA. NBA is 4%. I don't know why I'm talking about NBA during week 4 of the NFL, but you get the idea. The difference between boosting and if then is like, if I go into my advanced rules and I want to boost, I can boost let me move myself here. If a lineup contains Tua, I can then boost Gabe Davis by 20%. But maybe I don't want to boost Gabe Davis 20% across 300 lineups that I'm optimizing, right? I don't want to force him in non-Tua lineups. Maybe if the lineup contains any Tua and Hill, I would like to boost Gabe Davis. That way, it's saying maybe I get some Hill some Hill Gabe Davis correlation, even if it's not Miami stack, right? So that's another way to do it. And then obviously the biggest difference here is if then I can do so much more than boost. For instance, if a lineup contains any Justin Herbert, I use exactly 0 Joshua Kelly. I mean, Herbert's just not throwing Kelly the ball. So I don't want Herbert Kelly onslaughts at all. So I think, that's a pretty clear way to create some different rules that are not just boosting a player's projection, or docking a player's projection. So there's a lot that you could do, right? You can create so many different types of statements, if-then statements. So hopefully that answers both of y'all's questions. Now, Kling asked, I was wondering what type of sim ROI and sim cash rate should we be looking for? Sorry for the questions, just trying to understand how to use it. Great question. So look, I think cash rates are going to vary, right, from slate to slate. So I wouldn't be shooting or aiming for a specific cash rate or ROI. They're going to vary from slate to slate and tournament to tournament. In general, the cash rates and ROI should be used to compare lineups to each other. And I kind of mentioned that earlier, but instead of shooting for a specific number to reach, sim some lineups, edit one or two of them, and resim that same group of lineups in the same field and see how your manual edits changed from a ROI or cash rate in that same contest against that same field. And that's super important. So when you're doing the sims here and you simulate, it's going to ask you if you would like to use the same field as a previous sim. Yes, you absolutely want to do that. Now, simming on Sunday morning is probably the most optimal time to sim because we have most of the information by then. Obviously, we get inactives at an hour or two before lock. So even simming then after the field has changed is the most optimal thing that you can do. So a lot of these sims right now, I'm going to redo all of this Sunday morning, re-upload, and go from there. So don't use these lineups because they are probably trash, regardless of what the sims say, because I had input on them. So to reiterate and just kind of tie a bow on that, don't aim for a specific ROI or cash rate. Use the sim to compare your ROI and cash rate to your other lineups. And if you have the multi-lineup sim tool, you should be simming hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lineups over and over and over again and taking the ones that grade out the best. It's really as straightforward as that. And then say some news breaks right before lock. We get a 15-minute news bomb. Hopefully, whatever it is that you have, I think like in week 2 when Cam Akers was a healthy scratch and just like not active and it was Kyron, hopefully you had Kyron lineups way down at the bottom of your sim. You could have just taken the top 10 lineups or 30 lineups, depending on how many you were playing, and just inserted those, knowing that they were going to be good because they were the highest graded ones that had Kyron Williams, and that's that. You don't have to worry about anything else. I highly doubt that you could resim and that it would really matter because the field you're resimming against the field that doesn't have the same news, doesn't have the same inputs. So anyways, that was a lot. Hopefully that answers questions. Hopefully that gives you some insights in the optimizer and the tools here at the solver. If you have any questions, any comments, drop them, or any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'm more than happy. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Ryan Hodge. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them there too. And yeah, with that, run good in week 4. Peace.